If God were to throw a party, what would make God throw a party? If people celebrate what matters to God that would make God celebrate? Now, this is a question that has very conflicted thinking throughout cultures and throughout history. For example, some people think that God celebrates the death of our enemy. And if we can kill the infidel, then God will celebrate that and celebrate us. Now, I don't think that. You don't think that. But there are people who think that's what God celebrates. But I grew up in a church culture. And growing up in a church culture, here's what I thought God celebrated: my Sunday school attendance. Because there was a chart on the wall with every kid's name on it, and stars were taped up on the attendance chart, and your attendance record was immortalized in the Sunday school classroom. So I thought, clearly God celebrates my being in the room. Did you learn anything? No, but I was in the room. Or if you grew up in church, maybe you thought God celebrated good behavior. And for some of us, this is the reason why you left church, wasn't it? Because you were taught that God celebrates when you're good, but you went through a season of life where you were not so good, and you reached the conclusion that I guess God doesn't celebrate me, and you dropped out of church. There are people in our country who believe that God celebrates America more than he celebrates all the other countries on planet Earth. God clearly loves us more and celebrates us more. Still, there are other people who think that what God celebrates is my happiness. Doesn't God just want me to be happy? Isn't God thrilled when I'm happy? Doesn't that matter to God? So there is major confusion around this topic of what God celebrates and figuring out, therefore, what matters to God. Now this thinking was already confused in Jesus' day. In fact, one time, the religious people in Jesus' generation, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, they were so confused over this topic. So Jesus decided one day to teach a series of 3 parables, all of which to answer the question, what does God celebrate? Because if you understand what someone celebrates, you can see what matters to the person. Today we're going to be in Luke's biography of the life of Jesus, right in the middle in chapter 15, where we read this. Now, the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear him. Now, I've said this before, but culturally in their generation, you had good moral religious people. You had ordinary people who were pretty good, but they couldn't be good enough to be the really religious people. They had to hold down a job and raise kids. And then you had sinners. But within sinners, there is a hierarchy of sinners. There is a moral ladder. And at the bottom of the moral ladder were the tax collectors, because in the time of Roman occupation, tax collectors were Jewish men who betrayed their own people to work for Rome. They were seen as traitors by the people. Yet, in their culture, these people who were the lowest of the low on the moral ladder, what do we learn about them? They were, what? All of them were gathering around Jesus, not to see a spectacle, not to see a miracle, but what? To hear him. We like when he preaches. We like listening to his sermons. Now, don't get us wrong. We feel totally guilty sometimes when he talks. But he welcomes us. He's not offended by our presence. He tells us the truth, but he cares about us. He welcomes us in. Which I can't help but wonder, in churches all over our country today, are all the tax collectors and sinners gathering to hear what the church has to say about this Jesus who we worship? Or are churches just for people who are moral and good and attend Sunday school and have their lives put together? Because for Jesus, all the tax collectors and sinners were gathering around to hear him. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, now behaviorally, these people were impeccable. They were morally great. They were religiously upright. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered. I'm not going to try and mutter this, but you can just imagine. This man welcomes sinners, and worse than that, he eats with them. In that culture, that was a symbol of acceptance. We're close. So they did not understand, how can Jesus, who claims to be from God, And we know that God celebrates our morality and our good behavior. How can he endorse these kinds of people who behave in these kinds of ways? That's the context. Then Jesus told them this parable. Now, if you're new to the Bible, a parable was a teaching device Jesus would use. He made up a story. It didn't happen, but the story illustrates something that's a spiritual truth. And usually in the parables, somebody represents God and somebody represents us. So the context is the religious people want to know why Jesus is welcoming sinners. So pay attention. You're going to see these dynamics come into the parable. He says, suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Does he not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? To which everyone in the audience, religious or not, said, well, yeah, of course we would. If we had 100 sheep and 99 of them were secure, but one of them is lost, of course we would leave the ones that are secure, they're fine, to go find the one that is lost. We can't take that kind of economic hit. That's exactly what we would do. And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep. To which everyone says, well, yeah, of course. We know what it's like to lose something. It's such a relief when you find it. I found what was lost. I can relax now. I can be joyful now. Here's what he said. I tell you that in the same way, there will be more, what? Rejoicing. There will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents. Repents means I'm turning around. I'm having a change of thinking when it comes to God. I was thinking I'm going to live life my way on my terms. Now I'm thinking I'm going to come back and conform my life to the will of my Creator who loves me. There is more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons. Righteous is a word in that culture that means we have a good relationship. We have a right standing with one another. Than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. Have you ever in your life lost your car keys? No elbows. Keep up here. Have you ever lost your car keys and you're frantically searching for them and cannot find them? Do you know what you did not do when your car keys were missing? You did not pull your driver's license out and say, but I still have you. Because when something is lost, where does all of your attention go? To the thing that is missing, to the thing that is lost. Jesus is saying, in response to their question, to their muttering, how can this man welcome sinners and eat with them? He says, hey, have you ever lost something and you're preoccupied with it until you find it? And then when you find it, see, that's how God feels about people who are lost.